There's the cloud. All right, so for the recording, welcome back. We are ACI course 4, class 10 on May 5th, 2024. Let's gather our minds here as we usually do. Please bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom, and see them there with you. They are gazing at you with their unconditional love for you. Smiling at you with their holy great compassion. Their wisdom radiating from them. That beautiful golden glow encompassing you in its light. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Feel how much you would like to be able to help them. Recognize how the worldly ways we try fall short. How wonderful it would be if we could also help them in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they would go on to stop their distress forever. We're learning that that is possible. And so I invite you to grow that wish into a longing. And that longing into an intention. And with that intention, turn your mind back to that precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know, what we need to learn, what we need to do to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please teach us that. And they are so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the perfect world they are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands, and we offer it to them, following it with our promise to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayer. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may all beings reach their total awakening for the benefit of every single other. So in last class, we talked about why it is that the various elements in the form of the sense powers, the elements that make up the sense powers, are not the unique cause of the mind. And quite why they changed the argument from material cause to unique cause, I'm not so sure. We had already established that the elements can't be the material cause of the mind for a variety of reasons. And now we're saying those same elements, as they make up the sense powers, if they couldn't be the material cause of the mind before, they still can't be. And we already established that the sense powers themselves can't be the material cause of mind. And so this is just addressing that belief by the audience that the body tissues make the mind. And he's helping us look at that in a little different way. That even if we say, well, the body tissues, living tissues aren't the material cause of the mind, but for sure, they are the reason there's mind there. They show that mind is there. The fact that our living tissue functions. So he's addressing that belief that it's the function of our living tissue that makes our mind see. Right? Seeing makes our mind see. Hearing makes our mind hear. That makes sense, doesn't it? So he says, well, look, if those tissues are the unique cause of the mind, then it should be that, again, if you damage or lose one of those sense powers, then the mind should be damaged in some similar way. And although if you damage or lose your elements in the form of living tissues that are the factors, unique cause for the mind's ability to know a seeable thing, you lose the seeing of things, but you don't lose the mind's ability to see things. If you were to have eyeballs that worked again, your mind would be able to see again. So to lose the sense matter doesn't make the mind be less. And if they were the unique basis of the mind, then losing them, the mind would diminish in some way, and it doesn't. And then he turned the argument around and he said, look, in fact, the mind is the basis for the sense powers rather than the other way around. He's still not saying the mind is the material cause for the sense powers, because that's not true. But he's saying there's some significant factor that the mind brings for those sense powers to be the sense powers and for them to function in the way that they do. And this is where he says, because it's karma that projects the next life and its physical form. So he would not bring up karma as part of the argument if his audience didn't already believe in karma, right? Otherwise, he's acting against the rules of using a logical debate to help somebody else learn something. On the other hand, if this whole sequence is really designed for Buddhists who believe in past and future lives but don't really know why, then this sequence is giving us a method of looking more specifically as into why it must be true that we have lived before and we will have lives after this one. So the whole premise is we're talking to somebody who doesn't believe in that. But deep down, we're showing ourselves, we're giving ourselves tools to understand that in a more visceral way, by way of going through these syllogisms of if it's like this, then that should happen, and it doesn't. As Flavia pointed out, those proofs are all proofs by way of denying something. They aren't proofs to show that something's there. But if you weed everything else out and you're left with only one thing, right? For the mind that you know exists, because here we are, then you have a proof. A proof by elimination is a valid proof. So why is the mind considered the basis for the sense powers rather than the other way around? Because it's karma that projects the next life and its physical form, which is the sense powers. And what's karma? Movement of the mind and what it motivates. Right? So karma is mind. So when we say karma is what pushes the next life and its form, it's mind that pushes that. Then what keeps the mind going in this life? If we're part of the mind comes from the body, people, Well, we say it's the ongoing neurons firing that makes my mind keep going. Because when those neurons stop firing, it's clear that the person for whom the brain stops firing is now dead, and they are not thinking anymore. They're not aware anymore. According to whom? The living one seeing them. We don't really know, do we? But we think we do, because they're not responding to us anymore. So his argument, or his explanation, more than argument here, is it's mental karma from the past that causes the mind to continue even within this life. Karma, 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 movement of the mind. When our past karma for this life is gone, this life is finished. The body stops, the senses stop. The mind moves again. And they call it throwing or projecting the next life, which isn't in the next instant. It takes time for that to form up into the next life, but the mind goes dit, 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 dit. Whether the mind's going dit, dit, or karmic seed from here pops in and then another one pops in, the experience is mind is going dit, 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 and it's gonna continue to do so. Yes, Lisa.
Lama, I have many questions about this class, that class, but I don't know
we
if
can't address them all, or we won't finish this class. But if there's
okay, maybe this one about the this what you are saying, that the mind, the cause of the mind to continue is the karma.
right.
I have to talk a bit because I am with my husband's family's house. But then in the other question is asked what projects us in the next life. And then it said also that in the moment of my death, whatever seed ripens is the one that projects the next life. This implies to me that my mind now is generating the next instant of my mind in the next moment. But it's not like that, because then, you know what I mean? Like, if it says at the moment of death, the critical seed is the one before we die,
Right.
it implies that the seed at that moment is creating, of the mind of that moment is creating the mind that is going to happen after.
Well, the seed
But
that's ripening
this is not the
now
case.
the seed that's ripening now is creating that moment of experience. That
Of
seed
this,
wasn't planted the moment before,
but
but the
before
seed
not
was in there.
but not the moment before, immediately before. Like what I am thinking now is not coming from the instant just before. It's coming from some seed in the past, who knows when, that is ripening now, correct or not?
The seed was planted previously, and it's ripening now into this moment of experience. And another seed planted long ago is ripening now into the next moment of experience. So the one that ripens at the moment of death is going to be a seed from before, but it ripens into the next moment of experience.
So why is it said that is important in the moment I am dying, not to think about the good things I have done, or to think about for the benefit of every living being, and not this bodhicitta mindset, because it's too late. I mean, this is already...
Well, no, it's too late, because we can't form thoughts. We can't form intentional thoughts when we get to the point where the mind is making this shift from the mind's end of this life to the beginning of the next one. We don't have any control over. I think that I will think about bodhicitta. We can train ourselves to be able to do so. But for ordinary beings, we're way beyond thinking in that way. And tonight's class is about what is it in the mind that pushes the mind into the next life. There's some particular inherent something in every seed that is the reason why we get pushed into another samsaric rebirth.
And then I will wait until the end of the class. Thank you, Lama.
Let's see. So why does the mind of a normal person at the moment of death cross over into another state of mind of a similar type? Was your quiz question. And the answer was because that mind has desire as that being dies. And this desire causes the mind to cross the line into more of the same thing in the next life. But that's so packed with meaning, we need to unravel it. So we started unraveling it, but tonight's class is unraveling it further. We were at his proof number 10, the main proof of future lives. Consider the mind of a normal person at the moment of death. Their mind will cross the line into a future mind because the state of mind at death has desire. So I think we had already established that what he means by a normal person is any being less than arhat, which is interesting. And then what that means is anyone who has not yet overcome all mental afflictions and seeds for more because of their individual analysis, which means because of learning to live from what they learned by way of experiencing emptiness directly. So anyone who has not completely rid themselves of their mental afflictions and seeds for more is this being we're talking about whose mind is going to push itself into another samsaric rebirth. The main, well, the key factor in that being who has eliminated all mental afflictions and seeds for more means that we're talking about someone who no longer perceives their selves and their world as having their identities in them, as being self-existent. And until we are not perceiving ourselves and others as having their own natures, when we die, there is some inherent belief still within us that is the factor that pushes our mind to project another samsaric rebirth, another suffering rebirth. It does not mean that someone who has reached that level of not even any inherent seeing things as self-existent anymore does not have a mind that goes on. They still do. But that mind does not push itself into another suffering rebirth. It pushes itself into a not suffering rebirth. So for those of us who are not at that level, our mind will cross the line into a future mind, a future life, because that state of mind, my state of mind at death, has desire. So this discussion on the surface is part of showing that our mind stream goes on. So proof of past and future lives was the punchline. But underneath, it also shows us that, gosh, if this mind is able to go through the death process without whatever that desire is that we're talking about, then maybe that thing we're calling the death process could be something completely different. You know, maybe that what the projecting karma of that mind won't be the one that forces me into another samsaric life. Maybe it'll force this one into something way better. So, like, underlying all of this is this clue as to what is it that really is the force underneath the circling of our samsaric lifetimes. And then if we look at that even deeper, where it shows us what is the force that's pushing us within a samsaric life from experience to experience to experience. It's the same force. So we get a chance to talk about it by way of digging into this 10th proof about past and future life. Geshe-la said that from his perspective, he wondered if the Sharvakas really were continuing to follow his arguments and buy into it, or if by now they had just said, I don't believe this guy, because it's so different from their belief system. And at some point, most of us will bail out. No, we won't do the work to change our minds if we don't want to change our minds. And so it's kind of hard to establish whether or not his audience was really still the Sharvakas, or if he's got this ulterior motive at still giving his series of arguments and explanations to his audience just to plant some seeds. Or maybe he had other Buddhists there with him as well, and he was teaching for their benefit. So to explain this, oh dear. Yes, of course, Ali. Talk to her higher mind and send her to the lab. She's gone. Okay, so to explain this proof, sorry. To explain this proof, we go to the Wheel of Life teachings. So our vocabulary, I have here these words, semchen and sosorkewo. Semchen means living being. But when we use the term semchen, it means a suffering living being. So you don't call a Buddha a Semchen, even though they are a living being. So a samsaric living being. You don't call a rock a Semchen, but you would call a mosquito a Semchen. And then Sosor Kewo is like a synonym for Semchen in that it's another term for a living being in the samsaric realm. But it has this other connotation of being one who's born into the suffering cycle, something like that. So this is the kind of being we're talking about. Then Sipe Korlo is the name for the wheel of existence. Korlo means wheel. Sipe means existence. We hear it as the 12 links of dependent origination. And I'll give a plug. Sumati is giving a class on the Sipe Korlo this coming weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I think. Through the ACI platform, I believe. I haven't seen it advertised, so I don't know the specifics, but you know how to get to it if you want. So Sipe Korlo, it is the explanation of the forces that push us through perpetuating this samsaric existence from life to life, but also from moment to moment. We're looking at it tonight, not in detail, but in terms of the factors within it through which we force ourselves into another samsaric rebirth. So for that, we look first to the link number 2 called Dujekile. Dujekile means the compositional factors, the things that come together to make something else, literally is what it means. But link number 2 is the making karma. They call it collecting karma, meaning the imprint in the mind when we perceive ourselves finishing some interaction, the imprint. Link number 2 is simply the new karmic seed made, a series of them always happening. The image in the wheel of life is the potter making pots, right? He's got this lump of clay and he's curving it, and I don't, you know what potters do, making pots out of it. And that image is about the seed planting that's going on. Mostly we're unaware, unintended. There's a whole lot involved in every seed that gets planted, but it's simply the collecting of the karma. I think it's a shame that they use the same word karma for the seed planted, for the time it takes to ripen, and for it going off. This language is so precise, but they don't have a different word for the imprinted seed versus the ripening seed versus the what's happening in between. It's all called karma. And it's confusing when we're thinking about it. So Dujekile is seeds planted. Then a bunch of stuff has to happen, which are links 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll get back to it. But in the process of those links occurring, we end up at link 8, which is gepa sepa. It means craving. Craving, the image is a guy feasting, like pigging out feasting. It stands for craving, meaning, something I want that will bring me happiness, bring me pleasure. I want it and I want more of it. So it's stronger than just, oh man, I'd like to go for a walk tonight, right? This is craving. Anybody ever had a craving? I don't seem to get them anymore, but I remember when it's like, oh man, chocolate, right? I need some chocolate, get out of my way. I mean, I was never like that, but we could take it to the extreme, right? That get out of my way, I need that chocolate. Craving. Hot on the heels of craving comes link number 9, gupalempa. Gupalempa means grasping. Craving leads to grasping. That's depicted by the monkey in the tree grabbing the fruit. Groucho Marx sang a series of children's songs back in the 50s, and we had a record of Groucho Marx children's songs, and one of them is about the monkey taking more than it needs. They're the just so stories, from Kipling, Rudyard Kipling. He sang those. And one of them goes, don't take more than you need, else it will be greedy. And it's like this monkey, it's like this wheel, this link in the wheel of life Groucho Marx was singing about. I don't know if he knew it or not, but my seeds. You go from craving to grasping. And that leads into link number 10, Chupa Sepa, which is depicted by a pregnant woman, a very pregnant woman, meaning at any moment, right? She's ready to deliver. That represents the ripe karmic seed, like so ripe that very soon it's going to be the one that goes off. The next experience that pops up comes out of this ripening karmic seed. How did it get so ripened? The grasping, the craving. It had to already be in there from link number 2. The other stuff happens. Part of the other stuff is link number 7, which is the guy with the arrow in his eye. And that represents the link called feeling, sensation. It's graphic because that sensation is going to be terrible to have an arrow in your eye. And it's curious that sensation leads to link number 8, craving, which leads to link number 9, grasping, which leads to link number 10, the ripening of the seed, which leads to link number 11, the ripening of this, the blossoming of the seed, the delivery of the baby is link number 11. The next life or the next experience, right? The ripened karma finally pops. But some factors had to happen to get the seed that was just planted in link number 2 to actually, swell and prepare and get ready to come to fruition. There are factors that are happening that are influencing it. And then it goes off. Those links before link number 7 were the links in which the formation of the physical body and the sense powers and the contact with the outer objects and the mind being aware of all of that is what's happening in links 3, 4, 5, and 6. The result of all of that is link 7 having sensation, physical sensation, as well as emotional sensation, as well as mental sensation is happening at link 7. And because of sensation, sensations are either positive, negative, or neutral. That leads to craving for more positive, craving for less negative, and craving for the neutral to become positive. So it's all called craving, even though some of it, it doesn't mean you're craving for bad stuff. But it's this craving, this emotional or mental reaction of this compelling need to do something to get more of what you want, to get away from what was unpleasant, which is more of what you want in a kind of reverse way, which is the link number 8, craving, which leads to link number 9, grasping. How am I going to get that thing? Or how am I going to push away that thing? Is still a grasping. And so we do something, right? The monkey is grabbing stuff from the tree. And those two states of mind in response to the sensation, craving and grasping, are the two factors that make those karmic seeds ripen, get plump and ready to go off. They are the triggers. No, they are the what plump up the karmic seed. And then there's a final trigger and it goes off. And that moves us from link 10 to link 11. So link 8 and 9, craving and grasping, are the key players here. And they come up so automatically that it's hard to even be aware that we're having them. There are 3 types of this link number 8 craving. And these are the 3: do-say, jig-say, and see-say. Do-say means desire, craving. What that's trying to describe is this craving, link number 8, which desires not to lose an attractive object. It's odd to be worded in that way, desires not to lose an attractive object, but it's apparently necessary to think of it that way. Jik means fear. Jigme, our amazing nun, Jigme, it means fearless. Her name means fearless. Jik is fear. Jikse means fear craving. But it doesn't mean you'd love to sit down to a great horror movie because you love being afraid. It does not mean that. Jikse means the craving that wishes to avoid unpleasant objects. So duce is the craving that wants to avoid losing pleasant. Jikse is the craving that wants to avoid unpleasant. And sise is craving for existence. Si means existence. So craving for existence is the key factor here, because the existence it's talking about here is our own existence. We want more me. Now, the moment when the I want more me is most powerful is at moments like if I'm in a crashing airplane, or if we're standing on a high building and my friend teases me like he's gonna push me off, right? It's like that. Our sise, wow, it comes on really strong. When we're faced with our own possible death, sise kicks in. I want more me. And it kind of takes over the other two, right? Who really cares about how good the pretzels are when the plane's going down? Who really cares about how bad the movie was when the plane's going down? All I care about as ordinary me is that I won't die. All three of these are involved in that link number 8, of course. But when we're talking about link number 8 to 9 to 10 to 11, talking about the process through which we are moving from the end of this life to the birth of a next one, the strongest craving that's kicking in is this sise, more me. The grasping then takes these three to a much higher level, particularly in the last moments of life. So by the time we get to the last moments of this lifetime, we don't have word thinking, cognitive thinking going on anymore. The physical body has shut down. The awareing is still happening, and all kinds of weird things are occurring. And it's painful. Not, you're beyond the physical pain part, they say, but it's mentally painful, because part of the perception there is the inherent belief in the me as being its own thing, me, a self-existent me, a me that is its own me, its identity and qualities in it. It's not thinking Sarahni, I want more Sarahni. It's just plain me. Me is being threatened. It wants more me, and then grasping, right? I've got to have more me, kicks in. And those two ripen a next seed that have within it that belief in self-existent me. Not self-existent Sarahni, that's long gone, but the me factor, the subject side. So the craving and grasping specifically for more self-existent me, but not in those words, right? Because you don't have those words. In the reaction, in the awareness, more me, more ignorant me, not in the words, in the feeling, is what ripens a seed that will be then the trigger for the next mind moment in the bardo, which will have content. And that contact has other seeds that come along with it, and that colors the direction that that mind will go, forming up through the power of subsequent seeds the whole circumstances of that next life. So what's in the mind that pushes the sise? What's in the mind that pushes all three of these cravings? Why do we crave chocolate? Because we believe that the pleasure that we get is from that square piece of brown stuff, right? There's other square brown stuff that doesn't give us that pleasure of taste of whatever emotional reaction we have. But we're so sure that the pleasure we feel comes from the piece of chocolate. We're so sure that the displeasure we feel from that person yelling at us is caused by the person's yelling. We are so sure that the me in me has its own identity and qualities, its own being, that we're so sure is the thing that's going to go on, that it's hard to even conceive of going on in some way that doesn't have that me. But the me we're holding to is a me that we believe exists in such a way that it in fact does not exist. But our belief in that self-existent me is so strong that when it's faced with its truth, it comes out craving and grasping for more me. So as it's perceiving itself to be dying, it believes it's coming to an end. And the craving that kicks in is, I don't want to end. Not in words, right? In reaction. Our inherent ignorance is in all our seeds. That inherent ignorance includes self-existent me. And that self-existent me wants no part of facing its non-existence, which actually does happen every time we die. But if we don't, if our reality is the self-existent me, not the empty nature me, then we're threatened by that loss of self-existent me. And that threat causes the craving and the grasping that ripens seeds with more self-existent me in them. And we can't help it. It's not a choice that we have at that time. And so we push that not really existing self-existent me into another samsaric life where we believe we have a self-existent me in a world of things that have their pleasures and displeasures in them that I want to get and I want to avoid, such that my life is about doing the activities through which I try to get and try to avoid, none of which actually work, but appear to work enough times that we perpetuate the misunderstanding that, in fact, putting the key in the car makes it start and gets me to the grocery store. And on the rare occasion that it doesn't work, I find something to blame for why it didn't work, instead of thinking, whoa, maybe the car isn't really why I get to the grocery store. Our ignorance is so strong, it's very difficult to override all the times that our actions appear to bring the result that we did the reaction intending to get. It's actually more helpful when they don't work, because then we have an opportunity to go, wait a minute, what's wrong with this picture? And start to recognize that there's something else going on here. All right, I yacked through our break time. Let's take our break. Stop share. Pause recording. Pause recording. Recording. Well, Bakchak is Tibetan, and Vasana is the seed. So Flavio was suggesting that we do have different words for the seed planted and the seed ripening, as in the Sanskrit Vasana and the Bakchak Sepa for the seed ripening. And so I stand corrected. In the teachings, we use the term karma, which is not a Tibetan word. It's a Sanskrit word. And so I admit to being sloppy in my use of that term and using it both for seed planting and seed ripening and for the in-between. When to be more technical, we would find the word for the Tibetan word for the imprint and the Tibetan word for the ongoing nature of the seeds and the Tibetan word for when it ripens. And I don't know that. Yeah, so we're kind of back. Maybe that's why they're using the same term. If somebody wants to do their Buddhist PhD thesis on the different terms for the different levels that karmic imprints are at, that would be interesting. Okay, where were we? I'm trying to put the pieces together into what is the desire that the mind has at death that forces it to cross the line into a future mind, a future lifetime. it's not just any old desire. It's the very specific, ignorant desire for more self-existent me. It's that desire that is the critical trigger at the moment of death that pushes a seed colored by that to make the mind project another self-existent me in a self-existent world. It takes a little series of seeds for that to become full on. But the very next moment of mind ripening from the last one of this life is the first one of the next life. It doesn't mean it's already in the womb of the next life or already in the hell realm, but it's already headed. And the seeds ripening that are going to come up along with it are going to paint in the picture. And it takes a period of time. It takes a time in the bardo, they say, before the seed ripening fills in the whole picture of me in my next life. Whether it's a mind trapped in a human womb or an animal womb or an egg or whatever that next life gets filled in to be, that they say can take up to 49 human days. But it's like you really can't even think of it in that term from the side of the mind that's going through it. There's no 49 days there, but there is like a level of seeds ripening or a number of seeds that have to ripen in order to fill in the whole lifetime. And then it's okay, lifetime is happening. It really, from that mind's perspective, I don't suspect it's like now I'm in the bardo and now I'm in the womb and now I'm being birthed. It's just like our life. It's like moment to moment to moment to moment to moment, shape shifting. And then boom, right? You're a human baby with breathing. What were those three? Sense organs and
Living
mind
tissue.
reaction, right? So there are two levels at which we overcome this ignorance. The ignorance being our belief that me has its own nature, other things, other beings, every other experience have their own natures, and the interaction between us then, the quality of that experience that I have is caused by them or that. And thus, I want, I don't want, I act to get, to avoid, I expect my action to work. If it doesn't, I'll still blame you. If it does, I'll blame me, right? And we perpetuate the mistaken cycle in that life and from life to life. There are two levels of that misunderstanding. One is called innate and one is called learned. The innate belief in self-existence means it's the belief in self-existence that we're born with, meaning, right, it's inside our seeds, it's inherent in our seeds, because we believed in self-existent me, self-existent other when I did the deed that made the imprint. Since forever. So all my seeds have this belief factor in them, which means every seed ripens, perpetuates that belief factor, which it's why it's so hard to overcome override intellectually. Hours and hours of hearing it again and again, our friend the pen thing, thinking about it again and again, trying to meditate on it and, getting to the point of being so frustrated that you can't get it, that you can actually get it. And over again. And it leads us through to finally our direct experience of the absence of that me in me, things in them, that we call the direct perception of emptiness, the direct perception of ultimate reality, the direct perception of the no self nature of oneself and every existing thing. And we have learned that when we come out of that experience, the first time out, we have these series of realizations of the ramifications of that. And then we go right back to perceiving our world and ourselves in the same old way as we always did. But now we don't believe it. Because part of that direct experience realization is realizing that you had a direct experience. You were not nuts. You did not make it up. It was not a hallucination. Part of the experience is to know that. But you can't make yourself see it again. And you can't make your seeds ripen any differently. The ones that are still ripening are ones that were colored with the belief in self-existence from before. Now you just don't believe it. So you're not replanting seeds with that belief in their self-existence, but you still have all these seeds for seeing them that way. And Master Dharmakirti's discussion says, look, if ignorance is the main factor in pushing our mind from the end of one life into the beginning of the next one, then shouldn't it be the case that someone who no longer believes in their self-existence, even though they still experience themselves that way, wouldn't that be enough to block their mind from forcing another samsaric rebirth? And it seems like it should, except that even for the Arya, when they get to that point of end of this life, they also are not necessarily at the point where they can be directing their seeds to ripen. So they will ripen, they will still have this self-existent me, wanting more self-existent me ripening, even though they don't believe in the self-existent me, it's still coming out of their seeds that are ripening. And that's still enough to force a projection into another samsaric rebirth. They say, however, that forced rebirth will be a good one. It will be one still in the Dharma. It will be one where you have your needs met. You will meet the teachings right away. You will have another direct perception of emptiness fairly early in life, right? You'll continue on your path, versus those who have not reached the point where you no longer believe in your self-existence, even though you feel it moment by moment. Our seed pushing may or may not go into a lifetime still in the Dharma, right, where all our needs are met, etc. It depends on the pool of seeds that we've got. Which, if you recall, when we did the death and the death awareness meditation practice, and we said, oh, only the Dharma will help me at the moment of death, it was because the Dharma is what taught me how, what deeds to give up and what deeds to take up. Meaning, work on purifying my negatives and planting as much goodness as I can, so that I can sway the vat full of lottery balls in my favor. If the lottery balls are mostly black and you have a few white ones and you want a white one to pop at the moment of death, the likelihood is remote that we'll get a white one. But if we pull out the black ones and put in lots of white ones, so that now we've got more white ones than black ones, the likelihood of a white one popping is better, right? Keep pulling out the black ones so that all you've got are white and a few little gray ones, and you've got really probably nothing to worry about going through death. You're going to get a good life, a good circumstance. Even before we've seen emptiness directly, we can try to fill our lottery ball full of white seeds because of what we know and how to do it. That all of those white seeds will still have self-existent me in them, however. So we're still going to get pushed into another samsaric rebirth. But that wouldn't be altogether bad if your white balls could be human, right? Another human in the Dharma, right? So we plant seeds trying to sway our lottery ball accumulation in that way. It's not until we overcome the innate belief in self-existent me that we are no longer in a position where we will be forced into another samsaric rebirth. We don't clear the innate seeds until we've gone through the path of habituation, clearing out those seeds from when we believed in self-existence and not reacting in a way that replants them, which you can't once you're an Arya. So it's not until reaching Arhat level that we will no longer be pushed into a samsaric rebirth. Does that mean that at the moment of death then of an Arhat, then their mind just disappears? No. It's still gonna ripen another seed from wise craving and wise grasping. A Buddha wants to stay a Buddha. A Buddha wants everybody to be happy. A Buddha wants people to avoid their suffering. They see directly how unnecessary it is. Buddhas still have movement of the mind and what it motivates, but it's not karma. They call it merit. When you have no belief in your self nature and are aware of that as you are perceiving yourself do something to another whose self nature you don't believe in either, then the seed that's planted is not called karma. It's called merit. It's still an imprint, right? Aryas are still having ripenings and imprinting their mind. Arhats are still having ripenings and imprintings. Buddhas are still having ripenings and imprintings, although it's all at the same time. I don't quite get that. It's not that the process of seed planting, seed ripening ever stops. It's the ignorance within the seeds that ripen into the ignorance within the subject side, believing in the nature of the object side, that makes me believe that what I do to get that pleasant thing is what brings me the pleasure I feel. That ignorance is the basis of the turning of the wheel that we call samsara. There isn't a samsara that we're born into and die out of. It's these ignorant seeds ripening, planting, ripening, planting, ripening, planting, that color our experience as samsara, suffering, because nothing really works the way we think it does. And so we're constantly disappointed or wanting for more or being hurt or hurting another, all because of this misunderstanding that believes the pleasure is in the thing. The displeasure comes from the thing. And me, the one who deserves that pleasure, deserves to not have that displeasure. Stopping the mistake doesn't stop the process of seeds ripening, seeds planting. It changes what we are willing to see ourselves think, do, and say towards another in order to create more of the pleasure that we want and create less of the displeasure that we don't want. When we get it right, we're no longer blaming the other for the pleasure or displeasure. We're creating the pleasure and displeasure, right? We shift from being this kind of being to being this kind of being. And when we're still not like able to relate to this kind of being, we think, well, as long as I'm being like this, I'm not ever going to get my needs met. I'm not ever going to get what I want because I'm always giving away, giving away, giving away. And to have that question, that conundrum, which I have myself, is an indication of our ignorance. Because deep down, we still believe, I want the donut because the donut has the pleasure that I want. And so I'll give donuts away until I'm blue in the face because the donut I'm finally going to get is going to be the source of my pleasure. But it's not. Well, so then why do we give donuts to anybody? It's a good question. Because within our sphere of ignorance, donuts seem to give somebody some pleasure. Do they really? No. Do they appear to? Yes. Okay, not donuts, give them apples. But, right, the difference between this outflow perception and the inflow perception, right? Watch Geshe-la, right? Get a sense of his outflow, right? Okay, so craving becomes harmful craving when it's linked with that wrong perception of our true nature and the true nature of the thing we're craving. Right? Desire becomes wrong desire when it's linked with our misperception of our own true nature, because that leads to our misdirected behaviors. Grasping, what we're willing to do to get or avoid the thing. When that's misdirected, we're perpetuating the cycle. When we crave for more existence with correct perception, before we get to the process of dying, we would just be doing all the kindnesses that we can find to do. Even just mental kindnesses when we're not around somebody else, because we know that's the only way for our own happiness to be, to come, to arrive, be perpetuated, and grow. Kindness is the cause of pleasure. Kindness is the cause of happiness. Geshe-la said, once we're doing all the right things, like once, out of cold, hard logic, like even before seeing it directly, but out of cold, hard logic, there'll come a day when we'll be forced by our karmic ripening to see ourselves as totally enlightened beings. Just like we're being forced to perceive ourselves now in the way that we are, we will be forced to perceive ourselves as totally enlightened. When the seeds that we have, like, that's what they're the seeds of. So there are 4 ways. Lisa, let me finish this last bit, but don't lose it, okay? There are 4 ways that we can perceive ourselves. And of those 4 ways, 2 of them are the ways that we perceive ourselves that push us into a next samsaric rebirth. And 2 of them are ways that don't push us into that next rebirth. And one of those 2 ways that don't push us into the rebirth is not a state of mind that we will have at the moment of death. So there's only one that we could have that would not push us into the next samsaric lifetime. So here's the 4. I don't have the Tibetan. One way that we perceive ourselves is called the unanalyzed conventional me. Unanalyzed conventional me just means I am Sarahni. I am not anybody else. I have a valid perception of being Sarahni. And if I don't go analyzing, well, what do you mean by Sarahni? Which Sarahni is it that you are? The one Sumati knows or the one Flavia knows? Because they know 2 different Sarahnis, and it's different than the one I know. Which Sarahni are we really talking about? That is not the simple me. Simple me is just me. To have just simple me at the moment of death would not trigger a next samsaric rebirth. But the thing is, we're way past simple me at the moment of death, because simple me is Sarahni me. And by the time we get to the moment of death we're talking about, Sarahni me is long gone. What we're dealing with at the moment of death is some other deeper me. Second level is when we perceive ourselves as having our own nature, and we believe myself to have my own nature. So this is deeper than simple Sarahni me. It's the me that we use the word self-existent, but I know I'm not self-existent. I depend on other factors. But the I that depends on other factors is a thing that's unique to itself. So we call it self-existent me. To perceive myself in that way as having my own unique nature and to believe it. That means I think I can manipulate my happiness by doing things that don't really bring me the happiness I want, but I still believe that I need to try. The third level of perceiving oneself is the level of someone who has had the direct experience of their own lack of self-nature. So an Arya. When they're out of the experience, they still see themselves as self-existent, meaning not see with your eyeballs, but hold yourself to be that same unique, independent being. You just don't believe it anymore. They know their perception of themselves is incorrect. And so they no longer collect karma, as I said before. Their link number 2 is happening differently. They are still making mental imprints, but it's not called collecting karma because they are not creating new seeds for more samsara. Then the fourth level or way of perceiving oneself is the way someone who no longer perceives themselves as self-existent and so obviously doesn't believe that they are self-existent. So this level of self-perception would be either Arhat or Buddha. The path of habituation and what happens during that time is what we do to move our perception of self from number 3 to number 4. So which of these 4 will push us into a samsaric rebirth? Based on what I said before, which is the belief in the self-existent me, is the experience of self-existent me is the thing that craves and grasps to more of it, that is the force that pushes forth the projecting karma at the moment of death. Based on that, which of these 4 must be involved in pushing that samsaric rebirth? Yeah, I have 2 and I have 3, right? And that's correct. Level 2, self-existent me, believe in self-existent me, that's a samsaric being dying and being pushed into samsaric being again. Arya is 3rd level understanding. They still have the innate seeds for self-existent me. And that's enough for at that moment of death to push another samsaric rebirth. An Arya is called stream enterer, which means they've entered the stream to the end of their samsara, but they're still in the stream. Then will reach a level that's called once returner, which means you'll be Arya on your path of habituation, but you've made so many of your lottery balls pure white that you're going to get pushed only one more time into a samsaric lifetime. And it's going to be with all the circumstances you need to complete your spiritual path. And then you reach the level called nonce returner, no returner, which means no more samsaric rebirth, but does not mean no more rebirth at all, meaning no more life at all. It does mean no more rebirth in the sense that you don't get born into your next life as a end of a non-returner. You don't say that a Buddha dies and gets reborn. They may change their emanation or their manifestation, withdraw it, manifest it someplace else. But once we reach Buddhahood, we won't be in that cycle of birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. We will be ongoing. Okay, so Master Dharmakirti said, if getting rid of just any kind of wrong view, here, just for the blessing of the Tibetan Langchik Kepa Mapang Chir Dong Na Ang Sipa Gala Yu. It means if getting rid of any kind of wrong view could stop rebirth, then at the beginning of the path of seeing, we wouldn't have to take rebirth. And that's not true. Aryas, our stream enterers, they still will take rebirth. Arhats don't take samsaric rebirth because they don't have the ignorance that propels the desire, the craving, and grasping that trigger old karma to ripen. They still have seeds from having perceived things as self-existent. Those are now obstacles to their omniscience, but they have insufficient craving and grasping to trigger those seeds to ripen. And they set about to damaging those remnants until they're no longer obstacles to omniscience. So the desire in the original statement that our mind, it pushes itself into more samsaric rebirth because of desire. The desire refers to this very specific desire that a self-existent me wants more happiness and doesn't want to end. It's not wrong to want more happiness, but it's thinking of ourselves in this self-existent way that pushes the craving and grasping that triggers the more existence, more samsaric existence. If we were to give it up, that's what this Langchik Kepa Mapang Chir means. Dana Ang Sipa Gala Yu means how on earth, Gala Yu, could we take another rebirth? Meaning samsaric rebirth. If we give up our inherent self-existent me, how on earth could we take another samsaric rebirth? It does not mean we disappear. It means our mind becomes free of that, of a life colored by that misperception. The desire means the desire for self-existent me not to end. And that desire for self-existent me not to end karmically causes me to have another perception of my mind, which goes on to perceive itself behaving in ways that it thinks will bring it happiness, but in fact are perpetuating its suffering and its wrong view. Self-existent me is the underlying factor. Get rid of that, and it stops the whole cycle. So even when the cycle says ignorance, the first link is ignorance. It's specifically this ignorance that believes in this self-existent me. And from that comes all the rest of it. When we do get rid of this habit of seeing things and self in this ignorant way, we won't have the craving and grasping that triggers a samsaric rebirth. How on earth could we take rebirth if we don't have the misperception that triggers the craving, grasping, and so more existence? Ta-da! Sa, he says, self-existent me. But it's not like we can go, oh yeah, logical, okay, no more self-existent me. Like, try it. And in the next instant, somebody says something and you go, what? Right? Oh, whoops, self-existent me in charge again. So it's not an easy thing. It's not up to our decision to stop holding ourselves as self-existent. But it's a process. And the very fact that you have the seeds ripening to hear it said is a huge, huge goodness. And those seeds are planted along with the many others that you've been planting in this coursework. And those seeds are growing. And presumably you're tracking your own behavior and choosing kindness when you can over other old habits, and making some changes and seeing some changes in yourself that indicate that, in fact, some of this is sinking in. And those little bits of changes that we might be seeing are huge, huge leaps forward, even though they seem like tiny little things. And they're worth adding to your rejoiceables list and saying, I'm happy that time I really didn't react negatively when the stuff jumped out of the mixer and got all over the kitchen cupboard. To remember those little bits of times when we really didn't react in the same old way and be happy about them is like the positive factor in this chain of craving and grasping, right? Adding to our good seeds by being happy about them and wanting to do more of them is a positive version of craving and grasping, right? That will help us be able to make those kinder choices in the future. all of this is a process or a dance or a game, or right, however you want to think about it. It isn't something that just shifts in an instant necessarily. But we're growing our ability to put the pieces together. And that's a great, great goodness. Okay, so Louisa, did that question get answered? Or enough to give you stuff to go on? Are you frozen or deep in thought? Okay, anybody else? Any questions? Going once, going twice. So let's do our dedication. So remember that person we wanted to be able to help. We actually have learned a critical piece to becoming one who can help them in that deep and ultimate way. And by the process of our doing so, we have already set in motion the eventual end of their misperception of themselves. And that's a great, great goodness. So please be happy with yourself. And think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hands. Recall your own precious holy guide. See how happy they are with you. Feel your gratitude to them, your reliance upon them. Ask them to please, please stay close, to continue to guide you, inspire you, help you. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it. And they carry it with them right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. Their love, their compassion, their wisdom. It feels so good. We want to keep it forever. And so we know to share it by the power of the goodness that we've just done. May all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. So use those 3 long exhales to share this goodness with that one person. To share it with everyone you love. To share it with every being existing everywhere. See them all filled with loving kindness, filled with wisdom, sending it forth to everyone in their world, who sends it forth to everyone in their world. And may it be so. All right. Good job. Thank you so much for the opportunity. You will teach me the review class. I look forward to learning from you whenever our next class is. Because I still